Beloved, tonight is not just another night on the calendar. Tonight carries a weight, a message, a prophetic urgency that cannot be ignored. There are signs in the heavens and whispers in the earth calling us to awaken. This night is a moment to pause, to reflect, and to align with the destiny that has been written for you. What happens tonight can change everything: your path, your purpose, and the legacy you leave behind. There are moments in life when the world seems ordinary, when the rhythm of the day lulls us into a sense of comfort, yet beneath the surface, the divine is stirring, signaling, and calling for our attention. Tonight, as you sit in the quiet of your heart and mind, it is essential to understand that signs are all around us, subtle yet undeniable whispers of destiny attempting to break through the noise of our daily existence. The challenge is that most people walk past these signs without noticing, dismissing them as coincidence or imagination, when in reality, they are the language of God reaching out to us, guiding us, warning us, and inviting us to step into a higher purpose. Consider the story of Joseph in the Old Testament, a young man who was sold into slavery by his own brothers, falsely accused and imprisoned, yet through every hardship, he recognized the signs of divine orchestration. From interpreting dreams to seeing opportunities in places others saw only despair, Joseph understood that God communicates through patterns, visions, and moments that may seem ordinary to the untrained eye, but are extraordinary when viewed through the lens of faith. Joseph did not dismiss the dreams that revealed his destiny. He did not ignore the small acts of kindness that pointed him toward favor. Instead, he paid attention, he discerned, and he acted. And through that discernment, he rose to a position of unimaginable influence, saving nations and fulfilling the very purpose that God had woven into his life long before he could comprehend it. Likewise, in our own lives, there are moments, encounters, and experiences that may seem minor or even trivial, but if we cultivate the sensitivity to perceive them, they become stepping stones to our destiny. Imagine a man named Daniel who worked quietly in an ordinary office, diligent yet overlooked, feeling insignificant and wondering if his life had meaning. One morning, he noticed a seemingly small detail, a pattern of connections in his work, a phrase in a report, a conversation with a colleague. That sparked an idea. Most would have shrugged it off, but he listened, prayed, and discerned. That small observation led to a breakthrough that transformed his career, blessed his family, and influenced countless others. This is the power of recognizing signs, the ability to see beyond the surface, to detect the fingerprints of God in everyday life, and to respond with faith and courage. The signs may come as repeated encounters, persistent thoughts, unexplained feelings, or even dreams that tug at your soul. Often they are subtle and require intentional reflection, prayer, and a heart attuned to spiritual awareness. The modern world, with its noise, distractions, and constant rush, makes this attentiveness challenging, yet it is more crucial now than ever before. Ignoring these signs can lead to missed opportunities, regret, and a life that falls short of the destiny for which you were created. Conversely, recognizing them can open doors to breakthroughs, divine favor, and fulfillment that surpasses understanding. Let me remind you that the Lord often speaks in ways that require both patience and discernment. He does not always shout, he whispers. He does not always appear in grand, dramatic gestures. He often moves in quiet, persistent nudges that, when observed, become unmistakable. Consider the biblical story of Gideon, who was threshing wheat in secret when an angel appeared, calling him to lead a nation. At first, Gideon doubted, questioning, "Why me?" Yet the signs, the angel's presence, the series of confirmations, the evidence in his circumstances, guided him to recognize the divine call. Like Gideon, we are surrounded by moments of divine instruction, but it takes attentiveness, humility, and faith to perceive them. In practical life, these signs may present themselves through relationships, career opportunities, or even challenges that seem coincidental but are in fact carefully arranged by a higher hand. There was a woman named Sarah who had long dreamed of starting a ministry but was repeatedly discouraged by circumstances. One day, she noticed a pattern. Every time she prayed, a stranger would mention a need she could meet. Every time she studied scripture, a verse would come alive in her heart in a way that directly spoke to her purpose. These were the signs she had been waiting for. Rather than ignoring them or dismissing them as happenstance, she acted. She founded a ministry that now touches thousands of lives, all because she chose to pay attention to the whispers of destiny. The lesson is clear. God's signs are never random. They are always intentional. They are like breadcrumbs along the path of life, guiding us to our purpose, preparing us for challenges, and opening doors to opportunities that ordinary observation cannot reveal. The key is to cultivate spiritual sensitivity, to pray for discernment, to reflect on patterns in your life, to trust the nudges of your conscience and intuition, and to act boldly when prompted. Recognizing signs requires faith, not just vision. It requires courage to move forward when the path is uncertain, and it demands humility to admit that we do not have all the answers and must rely on divine guidance. Just as Joseph, Daniel, Gideon, And countless others in Scripture recognized the signs and acted, so too must we be vigilant, awake, and ready. The night is full of divine messages, if only we have the eyes to see and the ears to hear. Every dream that stirs your spirit, every coincidence that feels too meaningful to ignore, every encounter that leaves a lasting impression is potentially a sign pointing you toward the destiny God has prepared. Ignoring these signs is to turn away from blessings, while embracing them is to step into a life of abundance, purpose, and divine alignment. As you move through this night, take a moment to quiet your heart, open your eyes to the unseen, and attune yourself to the divine rhythm that surrounds you. Ask for discernment, be mindful of recurring patterns, and trust that no detail is too small to be significant. Remember that the Lord works in both grand gestures and subtle signs. The same God who called Joseph from prison to palace, who guided Gideon from threshing wheat to leading armies, and who directed the steps of ordinary men and women into extraordinary purposes, is calling you to notice the signs in your life. The question is not whether the signs exist. They do. The question is whether you are ready to see them, to hear them, and to respond with faith. Tonight, let your heart be alert, your spirit sensitive, and your mind open. Let the signs that surround you become more than mere occurrences. Let them become guideposts, confirmations, and invitations to step into the destiny you were born to fulfill. This is a night to watch, to listen, and to act. The whispers of the divine are in the ordinary, and in noticing them, you take the first step toward extraordinary fulfillment. So do not walk past them, do not dismiss them, and do not wait for someone else to validate what your soul already knows. The signs are here. They are real, and they are for you. Respond to them with courage, faith, and unwavering trust, and you will find that the life God has prepared for you is far greater than anything you could imagine. There comes a moment in every life when the familiar becomes a cage, when comfort masquerades as safety, and when the steady rhythm of ordinary days lulls the soul into a quiet resignation. Many people live their lives in a kind of sleepwalking, moving through routines without ever daring to challenge the boundaries of what they think is possible. Yet tonight, beloved, the message is clear: complacency is the silent thief of destiny, and the time to break free is now. Consider the biblical story of Elijah, the prophet who had seen the power of God in thunder, fire, and mighty acts across the land of Israel. After years of service, after witnessing incredible miracles, Elijah found himself discouraged, exhausted, and hiding in a cave, feeling defeated by the enormity of the work before him. In that dark place, it seemed easier to resign, to accept the status quo, to believe that nothing more could be done. But God's voice was not in the grandiose or dramatic display of power at that moment. It was a gentle whisper, a subtle call to awaken, to rise, and to continue the mission. Elijah was reminded that even when the world seems overwhelming, and even when fear tempts us to remain hidden in comfort, courage is found in choosing to act, in refusing to remain stagnant, and in stepping boldly toward the call that stretches before us. In our own lives, complacency often wears a quieter mask. It appears as routine, as safety, as the false belief that this is enough, when in reality it keeps us from the extraordinary that is waiting just beyond the walls of familiarity. Take, for example, a man named Thomas, a small-town teacher who had long harbored a dream of writing a book that could inspire others. Year after year, he settled into the familiar rhythms of his work, telling himself that one day he would write. Yet every day passed without action. Then one morning, after attending a motivational seminar, Thomas realized that his comfort had become a cage, and the fear of failure had been quietly holding him hostage. He made a choice, deliberate, courageous decision to break free from the inertia that had gripped him. He began writing in small increments, often late at night after his students had gone home, and over time the words accumulated, the ideas flourished, and eventually his book was published to wide acclaim, touching lives far beyond what he had imagined. The lesson is simple, but profound action, even in small steps, breaks the chains of complacency and allows the seeds of potential to grow into the fulfillment of purpose. The danger of remaining passive, of waiting for circumstances to perfect themselves, is that life continues to move forward. Opportunities pass by, and the calling on your life is left unfulfilled. Complacency whispers lies. You are comfortable enough. You are safe here. Don't risk disappointment. But the truth is that comfort is not destiny. Purpose is not found in stagnation. Your true life, the life that God has designed uniquely for you, requires action, initiative, and courage. Even the smallest step toward breaking free can set in motion events that transform your life in ways you cannot yet imagine. Breaking free from complacency also requires faith, the faith to believe that God's plan for your life is greater than the fears that hold you back, greater than the doubts that whisper in your ear, and greater than the comfort that seduces you into passivity. Consider the life of Moses, who spent 40 years in the desert, tending sheep, waiting, learning, and living a life that seemed ordinary, even mundane. Yet when the call came from the burning bush, Moses was summoned to a destiny far beyond his imagination, to lead a nation out of bondage, to challenge the might of Pharaoh, and to walk in the power of God's purpose. Had he remained in the comfort of his known existence, the liberation of an entire people would have been delayed, and his own life would have been left unfulfilled. Moses chose courage, he chose action, and in that choice, he stepped into the extraordinary. Tonight, reflect upon your own caves, your own deserts of comfort and routine. Whereas complacency settled in your life, whispering that now is not the time, that you are not ready, or that your efforts will not matter. God is calling you to rise above that voice, to step boldly into the unknown, and to embrace the challenges that are the gateway to your destiny. Realize that courage is not the absence of fear, but the decision to act despite it. Courage is not always loud or dramatic. Sometimes it is simply the quiet determination to refuse stagnation, to refuse the lure of ordinary, and to press forward with faith that the path you cannot yet see is being made straight before you. Every extraordinary life, every story of triumph, and every tale of fulfillment begins with a single moment of decision, a moment when someone refused to remain passive, refused to settle, and refused to allow fear or comfort to dictate their future. Just as Elijah was reminded in the cave, just as Moses answered the call from the burning bush, and just as Thomas took the first tentative steps toward his dream, you too are called tonight to break free from the chains of complacency. Listen closely, beloved. The whispers of destiny are calling your name. The small nudges, the quiet urgings, the opportunities that have been lingering on the edges of your awareness. All of these are invitations to act, to rise, and to embrace the life that was designed specifically for you. Courage, faith, and purposeful action are your keys. The night is alive with possibility, and the decision to move, to step forward, and to refuse the false security of comfort can unlock blessings, opportunities, and fulfillment beyond anything you have imagined. Do not allow complacency to steal the years of your life that are meant for greatness. Do not let the fear of failure or the lure of comfort convince you to remain still. Tonight is the night to awaken, to break free, and to move boldly into the destiny that awaits. Choose faith over fear, action over hesitation, and purpose over passivity. The extraordinary life you have dreamed of is not a distant illusion. It is within reach if you choose tonight to rise, to act, and to embrace the calling that has been quietly waiting for you all along. There is a rhythm to life that few truly understand, a divine timing that orchestrates every season, every encounter, and every breakthrough in ways that are often invisible to the human eye. Too often we become impatient, frustrated, or even discouraged because we look at the clock of our own understanding rather than the perfect timing of God. But tonight, beloved, understand this: there is a divine timetable, and it is always unfolding exactly as it should, even when we cannot see the full picture. Consider the biblical story of Abraham and Sarah, a couple promised by God that they would be the parents of a great nation. For years, Abraham and Sarah waited. Decades passed, and the promise seemed impossible. They faced doubt, ridicule, and natural obstacles, yet the promise never failed. Every delay, every season of waiting was part of God's perfect plan, timing that was beyond human comprehension, but entirely faithful and intentional. When the promised child Isaac finally arrived, it was not too early, and it was not too late. It was precisely at the moment that God had orchestrated. This story reminds us that embracing divine timing means trusting that delays, detours, and pauses are not denials, but preparations. In our own lives, there are moments when it feels as though our prayers are unheard or our dreams are stalled. Perhaps you have prayed for years for a breakthrough in your career, for reconciliation in a relationship, or for guidance in a personal decision. The waiting can feel unbearable, and the temptation to act prematurely or give up can seem overwhelming. Yet consider the story of a woman named Maria who had long desired to start a nonprofit organization to help at-risk youth. She prayed, planned, and prepared for years, yet every attempt seemed to meet obstacles. Doors closed, funding fell through, and discouragement threatened to take root. But she did not abandon faith. She continued to serve, to plan, and to seek guidance. One day, seemingly out of nowhere, an unexpected partnership fell into place. Perfect timing, aligning with her skills, resources, and vision. And her organization was able to launch with incredible impact, far beyond what she could have orchestrated on her own. The lesson here is that divine timing requires patience, discernment, and faith. It asks us to trust that the moments of waiting are not wasted, that preparation is as crucial as action, and that the right opportunities often arrive only when we are fully ready to receive them. Embracing divine timing also calls for discernment. We must learn to recognize when it is time to act and when it is time to wait, to distinguish between a door that is truly closed and one that is temporarily delayed. Joseph in the Old Testament provides another profound example. Sold into slavery by his brothers, falsely accused, and imprisoned, Joseph could have easily despaired, believing that his dreams were over. Yet he continued faithfully in the circumstances where God placed him. When the time was right, Joseph's gifts were revealed, and he rose to a position of power in Egypt, saving nations from famine and fulfilling the very dreams God had given him long before. Every step, every trial, every season of waiting was purposeful, leading him exactly to the moment when his life could align perfectly with God's plan. In the same way, we must understand that life is not a series of random events, but a divinely choreographed sequence where each step, each delay, and each challenge has a purpose. Embracing divine timing also requires surrender. We must relinquish the desire to control every detail, to force outcomes, and to act according to our own timetable. True faith trusts that God's timing is superior to our own, that his wisdom is perfect, and that his plans are for our ultimate good. There was a man named Samuel, a young professional who longed for a promotion and believed he had earned it. He worked tirelessly, sought every opportunity, and became frustrated when others were promoted ahead of him. Yet he continued to grow, to learn, and to serve faithfully, trusting that the right season would come. Months later, a new leadership position opened, perfectly suited to his talents, values, and vision. What he had tried to force prematurely would not have served him as well as the timing that God orchestrated. Divine timing ensures that blessings, opportunities, and breakthroughs arrive when we are fully prepared, when the circumstances are right, and when our actions can produce maximum impact. Faith in timing does not mean passivity. It means active preparation while waiting, discerning the cues of God, and aligning our hearts and minds with his will. As you reflect tonight, consider the seasons of waiting in your own life. Where have you grown impatient? Where have you tried to force outcomes before the time was right? Embrace the reality that God's timing is perfect and that the wait is not punishment but preparation. Every delay contains a lesson, every pause a refining process, and every season a shaping of character and destiny. Patience, faith, and attentiveness to the divine rhythm will allow you to seize the right moment when it arrives, turning waiting into wisdom and preparation into opportunity. Just as Abraham and Sarah, Joseph, and countless others in Scripture experienced, so too will you find that when the time is right, everything aligns, doors open, and blessings flow in ways that far surpass your imagination. Tonight is a reminder that you are in a season of divine timing. Trust it. Prepare for it. Act when it arrives. The universe is aligned, the moments are coordinated, and the plan is unfolding perfectly, precisely, and faithfully. Surrender your impatience, cultivate your faith, and embrace the understanding that life's most significant breakthroughs often come not in haste, but in divine timing at the moment God has orchestrated. Fear and doubt are silent masters that creep into our lives, often unnoticed, yet their influence can be more destructive than any external obstacle. There are moments when the heart is heavy, when the mind whispers lies, and when the soul questions its worth and purpose. Beloved, tonight, understand this. The greatest barriers to the life God has planned for you are often the invisible ones within your own mind. The fear of failure, the anxiety of uncertainty, and the doubts that tell you that you are not capable, not ready, or not worthy. Consider the biblical story of Peter walking on water. The disciples were caught in a storm, waves crashing around them, and fear gripping their hearts. Peter stepped out of the boat in faith, walking on the water toward Jesus. For a moment, he defied the impossible, moving beyond human limitation through trust and courage. Yet, the moment he allowed fear and doubt to take hold, when he looked at the wind, the waves, and the impossible circumstances, he began to sink. The story of Peter teaches us that faith allows us to rise above fear, but doubt has the power to pull us under. Faith and fear cannot coexist in the same space. One dominates, one determines the trajectory of our lives. In our contemporary world, fear often manifests as hesitation, procrastination, or the endless rationalizing of why we cannot step into the life we are called to live. Consider the story of a young woman named Lila, who had a dream of opening a community center to help marginalized youth. She had the vision, the passion, and the skills, yet the fear of failure haunted her every step. What if she invested time and money and it did not succeed? What if people laughed or criticized her? What if she fell short? Each fear whispered reasons to stop, to wait, to remain in the safety of the familiar. But one night, after fervent prayer and reflection, she felt a deep conviction. God was calling her to act, not to remain paralyzed by doubt. She took a single step, opening the center in a small rented space. The beginning was humble, the challenge is real, but every act of faith overcame a mountain of fear. Over time, the center flourished, touching lives that she never imagined, demonstrating the transformative power of courage in the face of doubt. The principle is universal. Fear and doubt are not signs to retreat. They are signals that you are on the edge of growth, on the threshold of destiny, and on the verge of breakthroughs that can only come through bold action. The biblical narrative reinforces this truth repeatedly. Think of Gideon, hiding in the winepress, threshing wheat in secret because he felt inadequate to lead Israel. Fear and doubt gripped him, yet the angel of the Lord appeared, affirming his calling and instructing him to rise. Gideon questioned, hesitated, and sought further confirmation. Yet ultimately, he confronted his fears, led an army, and experienced victory against overwhelming odds. What would have happened if he had surrendered to doubt, if he had allowed fear to dictate his response? The people would have remained in bondage, and his purpose would have been left unfulfilled. Likewise, in our own lives, confronting fear and doubt is not merely an option. It is a requirement for the fulfillment of destiny. Fear attempts to convince us that the stakes are too high, that the risks are insurmountable, or that we are too weak, but it is in precisely those moments that courage must rise. To confront fear does not mean we feel no fear. It means we act in faith despite it. Every extraordinary achievement, every life-changing breakthrough, and every testimony of triumph is rooted in a choice to step forward, even when fear whispers the opposite. The key is to anchor yourself in faith, to remember the promises of God, and to rely on the inner strength that is cultivated through prayer, reflection, and trust. Fear is like a shadow that looms larger when we focus on it. Faith is the light that dispels it when we redirect our attention to the power and presence of God within us. Consider another illustrative example, a man named Daniel, an entrepreneur with a vision to launch a business that could provide jobs and support his community. Investors doubted him, competitors mocked his plan, and the economic climate was uncertain. Fear of failure tempted him to abandon the dream, yet he pressed forward step by step, guided by faith and careful discernment. Today, that business thrives, impacting countless lives, all because Daniel refused to allow fear and doubt to determine the outcome. The lesson is clear. Fear and doubt are not the end of the journey. They are invitations to deeper faith, higher courage, and greater perseverance. When confronted with these internal barriers, do not run or retreat. Instead, lean into God's strength. Seek His guidance and step boldly forward. A faith-filled heart transforms fear into a catalyst for action and doubt into a stepping stone toward clarity and purpose. Beloved, reflect tonight what fears have been holding you back. What doubts have paralyzed your dreams or delayed your destiny? The power to overcome them lies within you, strengthened by God's presence, guided by His word, and reinforced by the examples of those who walk before us, both in Scripture and in life. Remember, courage is not the absence of fear, it is the decision to move forward in spite of it. Doubt may whisper, fear may tremble, but faith is stronger, and it calls us to rise above the limitations that seem real but are, in truth, temporary. Every time you confront fear, every time you act despite doubt, you step into a higher level of purpose, aligning yourself with the destiny that God has prepared for you. Tonight, let your heart be fearless, let your mind be anchored in faith, and let your actions reflect the trust that you are not alone in this journey. Just as Peter walked on water, Gideon led armies, and countless ordinary people have achieved extraordinary outcomes, so too can you rise above fear and doubt, stepping boldly into the life you were designed to live. This night is a reminder that fear is a test, doubt is a challenge, and courage is the pathway to destiny. Confront them, overcome them, and watch as the impossible becomes possible, the ordinary becomes extraordinary, and your faith becomes the vessel through which miracles flow. There is a calling that resides within each of us, a unique purpose that was carefully woven into the fabric of our being before we ever drew breath. And tonight, beloved, you are being reminded that it is time to claim it. Too often, people drift through life settling for fragments of dreams, small measures of potential, or broad visions that do not belong to them, when the truth is that the purpose for which you were created is waiting for you to embrace it fully, courageously, and without hesitation. The world may attempt to distract you, circumstances may attempt to confine you, and fear may attempt to convince you that your dreams are too big, too risky, or too impossible. But the divine spark within you is relentless, persistent, and unyielding, calling you to rise, to act, and to fulfill the destiny that is uniquely yours. Consider the biblical story of Esther, a young Jewish woman living in exile, whose identity and potential seemed ordinary to all who saw her. She could have remained in the shadows, content with survival, but when the moment came for her to act, she recognized that her life had been placed in a position of influence for such a time as this. With courage, wisdom, and faith, Esther claimed her purpose, risking her life to intercede for her people, and through her bold actions, a nation was saved. The lesson is profound. Claiming your purpose often requires stepping into spaces that feel intimidating, confronting uncertainty, and trusting that God has equipped you for every challenge and every opportunity that aligns with your calling. In our modern world, this principle manifests in countless ways. Take, for example, the story of a man named David, not the biblical king, but a contemporary individual whose life had been marked by ordinary routines, modest achievements, and a quiet longing for something greater. David had always felt a pull toward teaching and mentoring young men in his community, yet he doubted his ability to make a real impact. One day, he decided to start small, offering a weekly discussion group for local youth. That small act of embracing his calling grew into a full mentorship program. transforming the lives of dozens of young men and inspiring a ripple effect that reached far beyond what David could have imagined. By claiming his purpose, he aligned his life with a higher calling, turning his passion and gifts into tangible impact. Claiming your purpose requires faith. The faith to believe that your life is not random, that your talents are not accidental, and that your experiences, even the painful ones, have been preparing you for the moment when you would step into your calling. It also requires courage, because purpose often calls us out of comfort zones, challenging environments, or familiar routines. It demands perseverance, because the path may be difficult, resistance may appear, and success may not arrive as quickly as we hope. Yet when we persist, when we act with intention, and when we embrace our unique destiny, the results are transformative not only for ourselves, but for those whose lives we touch along the way. Another biblical illustration is the story of Nehemiah, who felt the burden of rebuilding Jerusalem's walls while living in a foreign land, surrounded by discouragement, opposition, and immense logistical challenges. Nehemiah could have chosen safety and inaction, but instead he claimed his purpose. He organized, prayed, inspired others, and led with unwavering conviction. The walls were rebuilt and the city restored, demonstrating that claiming one's purpose is not only an act of personal fulfillment, but also an act that can alter the course of communities and generations. In our own lives, the divine invitation to claim purpose may appear as a recurring idea, a persistent dream, or a deep sense of dissatisfaction with mediocrity. It may appear as the voice of conscience urging you to act, the repeated nudges of opportunity, or the inner stirring that will not be silenced. To ignore it is to deny the life you were born to live. To embrace it is to step into the extraordinary. Consider a woman named Grace, who had long dreamed of becoming a nurse to serve underprivileged communities. Financial hardship, familial obligations, and societal expectations seemed to block every pathway, yet she refused to relinquish her calling. Through persistence, prayer, and incremental steps, she not only became a nurse, but eventually established a mobile health clinic that now reaches hundreds of people who would otherwise have no access to medical care. Claiming her purpose required faith, courage, and resilience, and in doing so, she became a vessel of hope and healing for countless lives. Beloved, the act of claiming your purpose is both a spiritual and practical commitment. Spiritually, it is an acknowledgement that your life is not accidental, that God has a plan, and that you are equipped to fulfill it. Practically, it is an intentional decision to take steps, make sacrifices, and pursue opportunities that align with that plan. Both aspects are necessary, for purpose is lived in action as much as it is received in vision. Tonight, let your heart recognize that the dreams you have, the desires that stir your soul, and the gifts that flow through your life are not random. They are divine indicators of the path you were meant to walk. Do not delay, do not diminish your calling, and do not defer the life that is waiting for you. Every moment of hesitation, every second of doubt is a lost opportunity to move closer to the fulfillment of your unique destiny. Just as Esther, Nehemiah, David, and Grace embraced their purpose, so too are you invited to step boldly into the life that God has prepared for you. There is no greater joy, no deeper satisfaction, and no higher fulfillment than living in alignment with the purpose for which you were created. As you reflect tonight, ask yourself, am I living in the fullness of my calling, or have I allowed fear, doubt, or distraction to delay the journey? The divine voice within you continues to whisper, nudging you toward action, and the world is waiting for the gifts, talents, and influence that only you can provide. Claim your purpose tonight. Step into it boldly. Trust that every experience, every challenge, every preparation in your past has been orchestrated to equip you for this very moment. The extraordinary life you were meant to live, the impact you were meant to make, and the legacy you were meant to leave are all within reach if you simply choose to embrace the calling and act upon it with faith, courage, and unwavering commitment. This is your hour, beloved. Claim it, live it, and let the fullness of your purpose shine forth as a testament to the power, wisdom, and love of God. Beloved, this night is more than time. It is a message. Do not dismiss it. Do not delay. Tonight, open your heart, embrace the calling, and step into the life that has been waiting for you. The prophetic night is here. Will you rise or will you let it pass? Choose courage, choose faith, choose destiny. The hour is now. Shalom.